I salute Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa Price. She's someone who's not afraid to speak facts and truth. Facts are not racist. Imagine scrutiny so fierce that a single comment about voting patterns eclipses a far more important debate on our national future. Jacinta Nampijinpa Price said the federal government is favouring large numbers of Indian migrants because they tend to vote Labor. Immediately, identity outrage exploded. Yet few paused to ask the question, is Australia's mass immigration policy actually working?
I'm not sure if many people have actually watched the interview in question. I'll put the link to the ABC interview with Jacinta Price in the description. Please check it out. She said nothing wrong. It's actually an excellent interview. Please watch it and remind yourself how the mainstream media and the other politicians have just spun this into absolute nonsense. I'll show you a little bit of the interview here now.
We're making it about being pro-Australian. Yes, there are concerns around migration in this country, and rightly so. There are many members of the community that are concerned with that, including those with a migrant background, because ultimately what pro-Australians are wanting is to limit migration to a point that is healthy for our country. We understand the benefits of migration. We've seen it, but at the moment we are suffering without the appropriate infrastructure in place. There's pressure on services and availability, and ultimately pressure on families. And what we want to do is to be able to strengthen families. And, as we were just discussing, I've just become...
Is it the type of migration that people are concerned about? What is the concern that people are worried about?
The concern is the fact that we can't handle it. Our infrastructure can't handle it. It's pushing up the cost of housing. I mean, the Australians that already live here, whether they be, those that come from here, originally born here, those that have made Australia their home more recently, don't have the same opportunities as we've once had in Australia. There is a housing crisis occurring, and this government does not know how to keep up with it. They're the real concerns. And look, when I travel around the country, and I've done a fair bit in my roles, over the last term, like I said, I truly believe it is a majority, because the majority of Australians that I speak to of all different backgrounds want what's best for this country and for everybody in it. But when they can clearly see that there's an issue with the intake of migrants to Australia at the moment, and the pressure that it's putting on our infrastructure, that is where the concerns lie.
And so is it just the core number or the type of migrants that are coming in?
No, I believe it's the core number, and it is definitely the core number. And of course there is a focus from this government to be getting them from particular countries over others. And
isn't it a non-discriminatory policy?
Well, I think Labor like to be able to ensure that they're going to allow those in that would ultimately support their policies, their views, and vote for them as well. So, yeah, I mean...
Do you think they're actively running a migration program to bring people in that you think will be politically open to their ideas?
Absolutely. I mean, this is Labor. Basically, it's power at any cost, and we see that occur all over the place in terms of the way they conduct themselves. We see the way in which they like to influence the Indigenous community and remote communities, the influence of the unions. It's ultimately about power.
So, who do you think they're trying to bring in to make them vote for Labor?
Well, those that are more Labor-leaning, that are likely to be...
But there are right-wing and left-wing people in every community, right? So who specifically are they?
Well, as we've seen, you yourself mentioned that there is a concern with the Indian community, and only because there's been large numbers, and we can see that reflected in the way that the community votes for Labor at the same time. So if they're going to see a reflection that, okay, these individuals are going to vote for us more so than other parts of the community, well, then of course they're going to express a view that we'll get those sorts of individuals into our communities. And we've heard that
they would contest that, right? You would accept that. They would say it's a non-discriminatory policy that has nothing to do with making assumptions about how people will vote. But do you think there's any evidence to say they're doing it a different way?
Well, Labor contest a lot of things, but over the years, we've seen the way in which they conduct themselves, and even more so from somebody who is connected to the Indigenous community and the sentiments around. There are those who don't have the same sort of educational background or ability to stand back and go, well, what are the policies that work for us, what don't? No, they get their claw into communities and basically have them believe that Labor's what's going to take them out of their away from adversity and give them the opportunities that they want, but ultimately they end up being far more dependent on Labor and the welfare system.
So do you think that there are particular groups that are voting in high numbers for Labor, like the Indian community?
Well, I don't think it's just the Indian community. I think it's certainly the public service sort of any group that is certainly understanding that they can rely on Labor's high spending in terms of welfare in this country. But as I said, we don't have the capacity to be able to service Australians to the best of our ability. Our way of life is getting worse. We're seeing more division. We've seen this division occur as a result of the Voice referendum, and now with the pro-Palestinian marches that are occurring in our country, and what we've seen over the weekend. And this is division that's occurring on such a grand scale, and we've never really seen it to this point in our country's history for a very long time.
The left-leaning ABC, mainstream media outlets, and both major parties pounced. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese demanded an apology, calling her comments not true and hurtful. Nationals leader David Littleproud urged Price to own up and say, "I'm sorry." Even Liberals leader Susan Ley branded the remarks wrong and not correct. Ultimately, she dumped Senator Price from her ministerial position, putting her back on the backbench. The thing that actually, in Susan Ley's mind, justified dumping Senator Price back to the backbench was not actually the comments itself. It was more the fact that Jacinta Price did not openly show support for Susan Ley's leadership of the coalition as the opposition leader. Susan Ley, as the leader, could not tolerate someone in her own team who was not openly supportive of her leadership. Let's have a look at a clip from ABC News.
Look, it all came to a head when Jacinta Nampijinpa Price declined to give confidence in Susan Ley's leadership, and that's the end of the road in terms of holding a shadow ministerial portfolio. And even the Senator's closest supporters acknowledge that if she can't bring herself to publicly back Susan Ley's leadership, then she can't sit in the main team that sets the policy and the future direction of the parliamentary party.
Yeah, I'm just interested to hear now what you made of that, because it was a really striking moment, wasn't it, in that media conference? Some were saying maybe it was a little naive, or do you think she would have been well aware of the ramifications of what was to follow?
Yeah, I don't think it was naive at all. I think she knew that this would be the consequence of the position she was in, and the fact that in her statement following her sacking, she made it clear that she's going to continue to campaign on these exact issues that have ultimately caused some issues, show that she wants to speak her mind on these issues, and that being outside of the shadow ministry possibly helps her do that. So I think she went into that knowing that this was the likely consequence of what she was doing. It did mean it was a bit of a circuit breaker both for the Senator and for Susan Ley. For Susan Ley, it was a circuit breaker. It gave her a clear reason, a clear rationale on which to demote Senator Nampijinpa Price that no one could really contest. I think if she had tried to do that based on the comments alone or based on the lack of apology, many of the Senator's Conservative supporters would have been outraged. So it did give Susan Ley some cover to do that, and I think that helps preserve her position in the short term.
I think Jacinta Price is very smart, because I think there's so many people who are natural coalition supporters who are not appreciating the leadership style of Susan Ley. I think Jacinta Price has sensed the temperature of the room and clearly decided not to declare her support for Susan Ley's leadership. Let's have a look at a clip from Joel Jamal.
look at the people going after Jacinta Price. You've got Alex Hawke, and you've got no apology from him, and you've got Susan Ley. Now, why are those two people interesting? Because Alex Hawke, last year, there was a Four Corners documentary where they exposed the fact that Narendra Modi's party, the Prime Minister of India, had a little branch of his party in Australia. And what were they doing? Check this video out.
So we started looking for patterns of the organisation's influence in Australia, and it led us here to the northwest of Sydney, the Hill Shire, which is also the federal electorate of Mitchell, held by Alex Hawke.
So while Susan Ley has shown her position of authority by dumping Price back to the backbench, ultimately I think there's a split in coalition supporters, and I think in the long run Jacinta Price's support base will grow louder and stronger to push her back and most likely demand a more prominent and leadership position with her strong voice, who is unafraid to tackle the tough issues. I salute Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa Price. She's someone who's not afraid to speak facts and truth. Facts are not racist. The hypocrisy of identity politics. Identity versus policy. Identity politics zeroes in on group affiliation, not policy impacts. Media frenzy fixates on an individual apology. Wow. Not on questions like, how many migrants can our cities sustainably house? Politicians shield their own immigration record by deflecting into culture war sound bites. Meanwhile, core facts get sidelined. For the 2024 financial year, net overseas migration to Australia was 446,000. The permanent migration cap for the current financial year, ending 30th of June 2026, is 185,000. But in recent years, they've been overshooting these projections and many more people have been arriving. Even still, 185,000 is way too many when as a country we are struggling to cope with the numbers that have come. So don't let them gaslight you that 185,000 is a small amount. It's not. It's huge. Imagine the MCG on grand final day and then multiply it by 2. That's how many people are coming in every year. That's how many people they want to bring in every year, but they bring in more. Temporary streams, such as students and working holiday makers, swell our workforce without long-term planning. Partner visa blockages near 100,000. Breaching legal commitments on timely processing. These numbers aren't just stats. They shape housing, wages, hospitals, policing, roads, and schools. Too often, identity politics short-circuits policy. Let's refuse to be distracted. Demand transparency in migration data, robust parliamentary inquiries into our national planning, and honest debate about economic and social impacts. Our future shouldn't hinge on who's offended next. It must be built on informed choices about who we welcome and how we sustain common sense. Hit like, subscribe, and tap that bell. Share your views below. Let's shift the conversation upwards, out of culture wars into solutions. I think the major parties are making a grave mistake by not being willing to discuss the mass immigration policies that they both carry. I think Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa Price touched a nerve, and hopefully a groundswell of support for common sense policy and protecting the culture, society, and economy that has been built by our heritage and was hard fought for. I don't believe Senator Nampijinpa Price had anything to apologise for. She was brave not to apologise. She could have apologised to save her current position, but she chose the high road because she knows the truth. What is best for the Australian people, the ones who live here now, the ones whose ancestors have built this great nation. the major parties are forgetting about us. Let's get behind Jacinta big time. Send a message to Susan Ley, the Liberals, the Nationals, and Labor that we remember, that we demand accountability, and we are watching. Till next time, bye for now.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that video, I want you now to watch this other video here on the screen. Not sure which side it's going to be, but it's about how the politicians and mainstream media are gaslighting the general Australian public about the mass immigration debate. Cheers.